The wind on Caldus Prime never stopped screaming. It tore across the ruined outposts, carried ash and bone, and moaned like the ghosts of the soldiers left behind. Captain Darren Holt crouched in the cratered trench, fingers clenching the rifle that hadn't cooled since yesterday. The sky overhead was still a furnace of smoke, and he could barely hear anything over the distant thunder of orbital bombardments. They had promised support. They said the treaty was solid. They swore humanity had friends in the Galactic Pact. Liars. When the Janthari turned on them mid-battle, Holt watched his squad mates get slaughtered not by the enemy they'd trained for, but by the so-called allies who fought beside them. Plasma blades to the back. Drones deactivated remotely. Whole battalions sold out like meat to a slaughterhouse. The Janthari cashed in favors and credits, and humanity was left to rot on the battlefield like vermin. Out of 10,000 soldiers sent to Caldus Prime, fewer than 200 had crawled back to the mountains. Fewer still were fit to fight. But Holt wasn't planning to survive this war. He was planning to finish it. "Captain," a raspy voice called over the comms. It was Rigo, the demolitions expert, or what was left of him. Half his face had been melted off in the initial betrayal. "We've intercepted another Pact transmission. Looks like they're shipping Janthari nobles off-world. Safety transport." Holt's jaw clenched until it hurt. "Coordinates." "Just uplinked. It'll pass Sector 9's orbit in 36 hours. Light escort. Looks like they're getting cocky." They always did. After stabbing humanity in the back, the Pact thought the survivors would beg or break or disappear into the dust like forgotten tribes. But Darren Holt wasn't here to disappear. He was here to make sure the Pact never forgot what they'd done. He pulled himself up, looking over the edge of the trench at the scorched plains beyond. A dead man's land. The bodies of both friends and enemies lay in twisted metal coffins, their blood long soaked into the soil. And somewhere beyond, in that black sky, the traitors were already sipping victory wine. "Rigo, get the strike team ready. We're hitting that ship." "You sure? That's noble class. Elite guards." "Don't care. They'll be expecting insurgents." Holt grunted. "Good. Let them expect someone. It won't help them." He turned and walked toward the hidden bunker carved into the cliffs. More of a graveyard now than a command center. Inside, a handful of men waited, gaunt and dirty, patched together with battlefield gear and raw hate. No orders from high command, no reinforcements, just fury and survival. They looked up as Holt entered. No one saluted anymore. Respect was earned in blood now. "We've got a target," he said flatly. "One that bleeds." No one asked if it was worth it. Every man in that bunker had lost a brother, a son, or a future. They were all living on borrowed pain. A young soldier named Trent stood up, eyes dark with fire. "You giving the order, Captain?" Holt didn't blink. Not an order, a promise. They betrayed us in war. Now vengeance is coming for them all. The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was agreement. Unspoken, ironclad. This wasn't just a raid. This was the start of retribution. The stealth cruiser they'd managed to scavenge was barely more than a relic. Its hull was patched with scraps from enemy wreckage, and half its systems needed a manual override just to stay online. But it still flew, and that was all they needed. Holt stood in the command chamber, staring at the holographic projection of the noble-class transport ship. Tall, elegant, plated in white and gold, like it hadn't tasted war in decades. "It's disgusting," Trent muttered beside him. "They float above us in castles while we rot in the mud." Holt didn't look away from the projection. "They think distance makes them untouchable. They're wrong." He turned to the small crew of warriors in the chamber. Rigo, patched up and held together by anger more than meds. Trent, too young but already hard. Murak, the silent sniper with dead eyes. And Bran, The ex-pilot who hadn't spoken since watching his wife's dropship explode under friendly fire. No speeches, no good luck, just business. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. They'd intercept the Noble-class vessel in orbit, jam its transmissions, and board it directly. No fancy hacking, no negotiations, just guns, fire, and payback. "We hit the engines first," Holt said, pointing at the ship's schematic. "Trap it in orbit. Then we go in through the underbelly. Less armored, less guarded." Rigo chuckled, a rough, bitter sound. "Think the nobles will cry when they see real war up close?" "I hope they do," Murak said quietly. "I want them to feel it." The ship launched without ceremony. No flags, no salutes, just the low hum of vengeance winding through steel. As they rose into the black, Holt felt the shift, not just in altitude but in purpose. They weren't survivors anymore. They were executioners. The silence in space was almost surreal. No thunder, no screams, just the blinking lights of the targeting system and the endless black horizon. Then the Noble-class ship came into view, coasting gently through the stars like it had nothing to fear. Rigo's fingers danced over the console. Jamming engaged, they're blind. Holt nodded. "Let's knock." The first strike hit the propulsion array dead center, sending a bloom of fire and debris spiraling into the void. Instantly, alarms on the Noble-class ship flared. Lights flickered. Systems scrambled. "They're panicking," Brand said, eyes locked on the screen. "Scanners show no coordinated defense. They're not soldiers." Holt's lips curled. "Perfect." The docking was rough. Manual override and a few violent twists, and the ship groaned as the breech clamps locked on. Holt led the charge, boots hitting the polished white floors of the enemy vessel, with a thunder that echoed through the halls. The first guards they encountered were in ceremonial armor, more decorative than deadly. Holt's team tore through them with ease. Plasma fire lit the corridors, screams bounced off the walls, and blood sprayed across the once pristine surfaces. They moved like wolves through a sheepfold. Inside the grand chamber, the nobles huddled in terror, dressed in silk robes and glowing implants. They looked less like leaders and more like pampered ghosts. One of them stepped forward, a tall, grey-skinned Genthuri woman, trembling in her heels. "We had no part in the betrayal," she stammered. "We're civilians, non-combatants." Holt raised his weapon, gaze cold. "Funny. Neither were the medics you burned alive. Neither were the children in Barrack 6. We didn't order that. You didn't stop it." The shot rang out, and her body dropped. No hesitation, no trial, just a lesson. One by one, the team moved through the chamber, exacting judgment on the nobles, each shot a sentence, each scream a memory. It wasn't justice, it wasn't mercy, it was war, stripped of all illusion. When it was done, Holt stood among the wreckage, breathing hard. The ship was silent now, floating in space like a broken dream. "They'll come after us now," Trent said, wiping blood from his face. Holt nodded slowly. "Good. Let them. We're not hiding. This is just the beginning." From the shadows of betrayal, vengeance had taken its first step. And it was far from finished. News traveled fast through the void. Too fast. Within hours of the Noble massacre, Holt's cruiser was flagged on every packed channel. "Terrorists," they called them. "Murderers of peace." Hypocrisy in purest form. The same pact that let humanity burn now cried foul when their own blood was spilled. Inside the cruiser, tension twisted the air. They floated in the black between stars, no longer ghosts, now predators marked for death. Holt stood by the viewport, eyes fixed on a distant system glowing blue like a silent fire. That was where the next betrayal had bloomed. Station Arden 7. It had once been a joint facility, shared between humans and Gentheri, a symbol of unity, until the backstab. The humans stationed there had been unarmed. Scientists, engineers, translators, easy prey. Not one survived. "Coordinates locked," Bran said from the helm, his voice flat, dead. "We're 3 hours from orbit." Holt nodded. "Get everyone ready." This wasn't about tactics anymore. It was message after message carved in blood, one for each betrayal. Down in the hold, the team was rearming in silence. No cheers, no speeches, just grim hands checking ammo, tightening armor, loading weapons with the calm of men who knew they might not return. Rigo leaned against a supply crate, his burns still raw beneath his jacket. "We hit the labs first?" "No," Holt said, strapping his sidearm to his thigh. "We hit the broadcasting core. I want the whole system to watch." Trent blinked. "You mean stream it?" "I want every packed bastard to see what happens when they kill our own and think there'll be no answer." For a second, no one moved. Then Rigo gave a low whistle. "Damn! Cold!" "No," Murak muttered, loading his long-range rifle. "Fair." As they approached Arden 7, no defenses stirred. The outpost still believed it was untouchable, deep in packed, controlled space, floating like a jewel in the dark. That arrogance would cost them. They breached through the lower hangar, cutting through blast doors with plasma torches. Holt went in first, rifle raised, eyes scanning. There were civilians in the halls, scientists, diplomats, technicians. Not fighters. But there had been civilians on Kaldus too. One of the scientists, a lean human, younger than Holt expected, stepped forward, hands up. "Wait! You're making a mistake. We're—" Holt dropped him without a word. They moved through the station like a storm. Shouts, alarms, gunfire. Some guards fought back, others ran. The corridors ran slick with blood, and Holt didn't slow once. Every corner turned brought more faces, more names he didn't care to learn. In the core chamber, they found the broadcast room, untouched, gleaming, pure. Holt shoved aside the operator, who begged through tears and slammed the console online. The camera blinked red. Holt leaned forward, blood on his hands, his face a mask of fury. "My name is Captain Darren Holt, 1st Regiment, Earthborn. You called us brothers, allies. Then you stabbed us in the back and left our dead to rot. You want to call us terrorists now? You want to cry about justice? You lost that right the day you sold us out for profit?" He paused, breathing hard. "So here's our answer. No surrender. No treaty. From this moment on, if you wear the Pact emblem, if you hide behind its lies, you are the enemy. And we're coming." He stepped away, and Rigo detonated the first charges. The lab wing went up in fire and shrieks behind them. By the time the broadcast was cut, 3 decks of the station were in ruins. The crew regrouped at the dock, bloodied but alive. Murak limped, Trent had a gash down his neck, and Rigo's laugh was more ragged than usual. As the cruiser pulled away, alarms echoed across the packed sectors. Retaliation fleets were already spinning up. Humanity had thrown its glove into the fire, and now the galaxy would burn with it. Holt stood at the viewing window again, the stars distant and cold. One ship at a time, one lie at a time, he would tear the Pact down, even if it killed him. The silence that followed Arden 7 wasn't peace, it was anticipation, like the moment just before a storm cracks the sky open. The Pact didn't send a diplomatic envoy or a warning. They sent hunters. 2 gunships caught up with Holt's cruiser near the edge of the Varan belt, S-class interceptors with weapons hot and engines primed. No chatter, no ultimatums, just missiles. The first strike slammed into their rear thrusters, throwing the crew across the deck. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and warning sirens screamed through every corridor. Bran cursed as he fought the controls. "We're losing power to the stabilizers." Divert everything to shields, Holt barked, yanking himself up. Return fire now. Rigo was already sprinting towards the belly turret. Murak dragged his sniper rifle and took position by the observation slit, waiting for a clear shot. Trent, blood trailing from his temple, was hauling power cells into the rear battery like a madman. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter in slow motion. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and cornered in deep space. And Holt wasn't ready to die. Not yet. He grabbed the comms console and rerouted to the engineering deck. Bran, pull us into the asteroid field. Blind their lock. We'll scrape the hull to pieces. Better scraped than dead. Do it! The cruiser dove into the shadows of the Viren belt, asteroids tumbling through the void like forgotten giants. The packed ships followed, their engines slicing through the dark like wolves on a scent. Inside, the crew braced for every shake and twist. Debris slammed against their hull like sledgehammers. Panels burst open. One of the coolant lines ruptured in the lower deck, flooding the corridor with smoke. Then, for a moment, silence. They lost us. Bran whispered. No. Murak said grimly. They're waiting. Holt knew it, too. The Pact wasn't stupid. They'd box them in, force them to die gasping in the vacuum, or flush them out like rats. Unless Holt flipped the game. Rigo, he said, turning sharply. How many charge packs we got left? Enough for one big boom, maybe two. Get to the cargo bay, load the mine pod. You serious? We're bait now. Minutes later, they launched the mine pod, disguised with heat signatures and active distress signals, directly toward a cluster of asteroids. Then they waited. One of the packed gunships bit. It curved around the field, laser cannons spitting across space, heading for the pod. Rigo triggered the detonation. The mine exploded with brutal brilliance, tearing through the gunship's hull like paper. The blast shockwave scattered asteroids, ripped plating off their own cruiser, and sent debris shooting in every direction. The second gunship broke formation. That was their window. Bran flung the cruiser into a tight spiral, engines screaming, and slipped between two titanic asteroid shards. The packed ship chased them, but the path narrowed fast, too fast. Murak took the shot. One bolt through the engine casing, one clean, perfect strike. The second ship spun out and collided with a drifting slab of rock. It went up in a blue fireball that burned against the void like a second sun. Cheers erupted in the control room, short, ragged, disbelieving. They'd lived. Barely. Holt leaned over the console, chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his brow, but his eyes burned with cold fire. They're getting serious, Trent muttered, slumping against the wall. They're getting scared. Holt corrected. We made them bleed. Now they want to make us disappear before the rest of the galaxy sees what we're doing. Bran chuckled darkly. Too late. That broadcast still floating around the outer colonies. I checked the relay logs. It's spreading. Good. Let them see it. Let every human out there who'd been abandoned, left to die, or silenced by a pact governor know. Someone was fighting back. But it also meant time was running out. They needed supplies, repairs, allies. Somewhere out there in the shadows there had to be others. Humans who hadn't forgotten what betrayal tasted like. And if not, then Holt would burn alone. He stared out into space as their damaged cruiser limped forward through the shattered asteroid field. This wasn't survival anymore. It was war. And it was far from over. They set course for a graveyard. It wasn't called that officially, just Relay Outpost Theta 5. But every soldier who'd fought in the borderline rebellions knew the name. It was where the last Earth Command resistance had made their final stand against the Pact's peacekeepers 10 years ago. Hundreds of bodies, most unrecognizable. The Pact never cleaned it up. They let it rot in the silence between systems as a warning. Holt remembered the stories. Hell, his older brother had died there. Now he was going back, not for closure, for ammo. Scans picking up wreckage with intact compartments, Brand said as they approached. Could be dangerous, could be nothing. Everything out here's dangerous. Holt muttered. That's what makes it useful. They drifted in silently, cloaking what little signal their battered cruiser could hide. The wreckage floated in a slow orbit around a fractured moon. Hulks of old warships, scorched comms stations, shattered orbital cannons. All of it abandoned. All of it haunted. Holt led the boarding team, just him, Rigo, and Trent. Murak stayed back to cover them from the ship, sniper rifle primed. Bran monitored their vitals. They boarded an old Terran carrier, its hull still bearing the black and red stripes of the Earth Command. Inside, it smelled of dust and rot. The emergency lights flickered like dying fireflies. The silence was suffocating. They moved through the twisted corridors, stepping over corpses still half embedded in blast panels. Most had decomposed, but some were sealed in their suits, frozen in place, eyes staring blankly. Trent swallowed hard. This feels wrong, Captain. Wrong was what they did to us. We're just taking back what's ours. In the lower armory, they found crates of sealed munitions, pulse rifles, grenades, medical packs. Some of it still worked. Holt cracked a crate open, wiped the dust off a human-made warhead, and grinned. Jackpot. They loaded up quickly. No time to mourn. No point. The dead here had already paid their price. Now it was time for the living to collect. But as they moved to leave, Rigo froze near a darkened control terminal. "Hey," he whispered. "You seeing this?" Holt moved beside him, eyes narrowing. The terminal was still active. Weak signal. Low power. But broadcasting. A human frequency. Rigo tapped the panel. It's a repeating loop. Beacon signal, coordinates, no encryption. Holt leaned in. The message was short, garbled, but the voice was clear enough. If anyone's left, we're still fighting. Sector Zeta 9, underground, outpost Leviathan. We never surrendered. Trent blinked. Is that real? Only one way to find out, Holt said, voice hardening. We finish here, we move. They packed up, returning to the cruiser with the crates and the coordinates. Bran met them at the airlock, his face pale. We've got a tail. Holt's blood turned to ice. Packed? Number pirates. Scanners picked them up circling the outer ring, likely scavengers. Might have seen our breach. Great, Rigo muttered. We survived 2 packed gunships just to get gutted by bottom feeders. They won't risk a fight if we act first, Holt said. We take the fight to them. Trent looked uncertain. Captain, we just escaped with our lives. That's why we don't stop now. They launched from the wreck, swung hard around the far side of the moon, and caught the pirate vessel mid-loop. It was smaller, faster, but fragile. Holt didn't hesitate. Bran fired a spread of modified torpedoes from the carrier's salvaged armaments. The explosion lit the dark like a second sun. No survivors. No mercy. Back on course, they set a jump path toward the coordinates from the beacon. Zeta 9, Outpost Leviathan. If the message was real, there were still fighters out there. Still humans who hadn't forgotten. Maybe they weren't alone after all. Holt sat in his quarters that night, cleaning his rifle in silence. The barrel still smelled of scorched blood. He didn't pray, didn't hope, but something in him flickered, a dull ember that refused to die. The Pact wanted silence. Holt was building an army, one ghost signal at a time. When they emerged, the silence was deafening. Zeta 9 wasn't marked on any updated star charts. The system had been listed as dead, voided during the early days of the Great Expansion. But someone had lied. Because what hung in orbit around the 5th planet wasn't just wreckage or derelicts, It was a hidden station. Massive, subterranean, shielded by the planet's natural electromagnetic storms. You wouldn't find it unless you were looking, and even then, only if someone called you in. Outpost Leviathan, Bran muttered, peering at the flickering readout. She's real. She's ancient, Rigo said, squinting. Looks like it was built before the first human-alien negotiations. Pre-pack tech, old-school Earth steel and fusion cores. And still breathing, Holt said. Land us. They approached with caution, engines running at minimal output. There was no challenge, no signal, just silence. But as they neared the planet's atmosphere, the cruiser's systems caught a soft ping, an encoded handshake, Earth military format. They were being watched. The docking process was slow, tense. When the cruiser finally locked onto the outer ring of the station, the silence shattered. A voice crackled over the internal comms. Identification. Holt leaned into the mic. Captain Darren Holt, Caldus Prime Survivor, 1st Regiment, Earthborn, responding to the signal from Arden 7 broadcast relay. Silence. Then finally. Docking approved. Welcome to Leviathan, Captain. The doors hissed open to a corridor lined with rust and shadows. They stepped out, Holt, Rigo, Trent, and Murak, all fully armed. Bran stayed back to monitor the ship. Footsteps echoed in the dark. From the gloom emerged a man, older, scarred, eyes sunken deep, like someone who'd forgotten what sunlight looked like. His uniform was Earth Command, the insignia dulled by time. You really came, he said quietly. You're the one who sent the beacon? He nodded. Name's Cole, Sergeant Major. I fought on the Kellen front, saw the Pact rewrite our surrender papers with human blood. After the fall, I came here. Others did too. We stayed off the grid. How many are here? Enough to matter, not enough to win. Cole eyed Holt carefully. You're the one they're calling the Butcher of Arden. Holt didn't flinch. I prefer Survivor, but Butcher works. Cole's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Follow me. Leviathan was less a base and more a grave that refused to close. Built into the rock, it went deep, miles underground, powered by a dying core reactor and guarded by ex-military personnel who hadn't spoken to the surface in years. There were families too, children born in silence, elderly veterans, broken men still wearing armor like skin. But it was organized, armed, ready. They were ghosts, but dangerous ones. Cole brought them to a central war room where old Earth Command banners still hung. Holograms flickered to life, showing maps, fleet movements, encrypted intel. The underground had eyes. You're not the only cell out there, Cole said. After Caldus, others went dark. Small groups, hunted, scattered, but they're watching you. Good, Holt said. They need to see what comes next. Cole looked at him carefully. You're planning something big, aren't you? Holt's stare didn't waver. They called us savages after Arden. Sent hit squads after us. Let them. I want to draw them out. I want the Pact to feel what we felt. Betrayed, cornered, broken. And then, I burn them down. For a moment, Cole was silent. Then he activated a private console, brought up a restricted file. There's a target. High value. Pact fortress. Not military, economic. They funnel bribe credits, fleet logistics, and suppress dissenters from there. Holt leaned in. The Citadel of Horus, Cole said. Neutral zone, no weapons allowed. Full of diplomats, traders, bankers. But it's the heart of the Pact's economic power. How well defended? Almost nothing. They never expected a direct strike. Too public, too political. But if you hit that, you'll collapse their core. Rigo stepped forward. You're saying we rob the heart of the Pact's treasury? Cole shrugged. I'm saying you remind them fear doesn't belong to humans alone. Holt said nothing. The idea wasn't just bold, it was madness. Perfect! I need volunteers, he said. You'll get them, Cole replied. That night, as the crew rested in the old barracks of Leviathan, Holt sat alone in the observation deck, watching the stars. So much death behind him, so much fire ahead. And for the first time, he wondered, not if they would win, but if there would be anything left of him when it was over. Trent found him there. You ever think we're becoming the same thing we're fighting? The kid asked quietly. Holt didn't look at him. Number. Because we were never given the choice. We're killing civilians now. That noble transport, the station scientists, some of them weren't soldiers. They were protected by a system that kills our kind for profit. That makes them combatants. Trent didn't reply. He just nodded slowly and walked away. Holt leaned back and closed his eyes. There was no turning back. At dawn, the plan was set. 2 ships, one carrying Holt's original crew, the other manned by Leviathan's best operatives, men and women with nothing left to lose. They'd go dark, hit the Citadel from orbit, breach it from below using abandoned mining tunnels, and extract every record, every credit, every secret they could. Then they'd blow it all up. As they prepped for departure, Cole pulled Holt aside. One last thing. If you fail, if you're caught, the Pact will make a spectacle out of it. They already tried that. No, Cole said, eyes narrowing. They'll turn you into the villain of every system broadcast. Paint Earthborn as monsters. Use your face to crush whatever's left of us. Holt's expression hardened. Then I better give them a damn good reason to be afraid. The ships launched. The strike was hours away. And across the stars, in polished offices and marble chambers, the Pact still believed they were untouchable. They had no idea. The Citadel of Horus wasn't just a stronghold, it was a symbol. Suspended above the planet's atmosphere on a golden orbital ring, its towers gleamed with arrogance, a monument to false peace and bloated wealth. Every inch of it screamed luxury, walls plated with crystalline alloy, corridors padded with artificial gravity dampeners, chandeliers crafted from supernova-fused glass. It was everything Earth Command soldiers like Holt were denied. Everything the Pact said they fought for, equality, stability, while feeding on the bones of the betrayed. Now it was a target. Inside the stealth cruiser, Holt's crew stood armored and silent. The new recruits from Leviathan, hardened and hungry, prepped alongside them. No medals, no names, just vengeance. Brand's voice crackled through the earpiece. Breach window in 20 seconds. Station security hasn't pinged us. The cloak's holding. Stick to the plan, Holt said. We don't stop. We don't explain. We strike. We steal. We burn. Rigo grunted, fastening the explosive satchels across his chest. Just like old times. Old times never had this much gold. Trent muttered, double-checking his rifle. The ship latched silently onto the Citadel's lower shell, bypassing the official docking rings. A forgotten mining tunnel ran under the infrastructure, originally dug for power routing. It had been sealed decades ago, but the Leviathan engineers had decrypted the blueprints. The Pact, in their arrogance, never patched the breach. The airlock hissed. The crew poured in. No alarms. Not yet. The tunnel opened into a maintenance shaft that led directly into the central vault tower, home to the Pact's financial processors, encrypted data stores, and political blackmail records. Everything they used to control systems, bribe senators, and bankrupt resistance. Holt's boots hit the polished floor first. Lights overhead flickered blue and white, casting long shadows across the glassy surface. They moved fast. The first guards, 2 uniformed contractors, barely had time to open their mouths before Holt dropped them with silenced shots. Their bodies collapsed in silence, blood smearing the pure white floor. They reached the control hub in minutes. A Leviathan tech named Rylak got to work, plugging a cracked data spike into the system's spine. "Give me 60 seconds," she whispered. "Take 30. Holt growled, eyes scanning the hallway. Outside the windows, the elite of the Pact milled about. Traders in flowing robes, alien dignitaries, silver-skinned Genthari nobles sipping imported nectar. Their laughter echoed through the upper atrium, oblivious to the retribution crawling beneath their feet. Then the breach alarm screamed. Too late. The vault opened. Rylak was pulling files at a brutal pace. Got asset routes, black budget trails, shipment locations, contract kill authorizations. Hell, I think I just found the original Caldus Prime betrayal logs. Holt stepped in, his voice low and venomous. "Take it all." Then he did something no one expected. He activated the public broadcast system. "Captain Holt!" Rigo hissed. "That's not part of the plan." "It is now." The screen overhead blinked. Every hollow screen across the citadel flickered, static shifted, and then his face appeared. Dark, blood-smeared, unmasked. "You know who I am. You know what I've done. And now you'll know why." Gasps rippled across the upper levels. Security rushed to position. The elites scattered. "We were your allies, your soldiers, your shield when your systems bled. And you repaid us with betrayal. You sold out Earthborn blood for credits and comfort. Now you'll pay." He uploaded a single file. Not all of it, just enough. Names, payments, signatures. A list of Pact officials who authorized the slaughter of Caldus Prime. One of them was currently in the Citadel. Panic hit like a virus. Security bots clashed with fleeing crowds. Diplomats screamed. Fires erupted as Rigo planted charges at key infrastructure nodes. Then the storm came. Automated drones from the Citadel's elite defense grid finally activated. Sleek, fast, inhuman. They swarmed from the ventilation shafts, plasma bursts lighting the corridors in blue death. "Fall back!" Holt shouted, pulling Trent behind a marble pillar as a beam scorched through it. Murak was already down one drone, his shots surgical and lethal. But there were dozens more. They fought like hell. Rigo lost his left hand to a drone blade. He didn't scream, just switched to his left and kept firing. Trent took a hit to the leg, but still dragged a wounded Leviathan man out of the crossfire. Holt moved like a storm, every step a calculated kill. He shot, stabbed, crushed. When the drones overwhelmed their line, he overloaded one of the vault's energy cores, frying 5 in a pulse of white-hot electricity. And still they came. "Time's up," Rylak called. "We have everything. We have to go." "Blow the databanks," Holt ordered. "Now!" Rigo hit the detonator. The vault erupted, sending tremors through the station. Gold-plated walls warped in the heat. Fire and plasma turned priceless architecture into scrap. They sprinted back through the breach tunnel, alarms shrieking behind them, smoke choking the air. One of the Leviathan recruits didn't make it, dragged down by a security mech, but no one stopped. They blasted off just as the Citadel's hull cracked from the blast, fire blooming behind them. In the control room, Bran was pale. "You nuked the Pact's treasury, Holt. That wasn't just a strike. That was a declaration." "Good. You realize they'll hunt us down with everything they've got now." Holt looked straight at him. "Let them. Let every soul in this broken galaxy know. Earthborn blood isn't currency. It's fire. And it's coming." Back at Leviathan, the transmission had already reached the outer systems. Underground channels erupted with chatter. Other rebel cells began sending coded signals. Pirate factions loyal to human traders offered supply lines. Merc groups dropped their Pact contracts. And somewhere, Out beyond the core worlds, the galaxy began to shift. The Pact didn't just lose money that day, they lost fear. In the aftermath, Holt sat in the dimmed war room, the flames still dancing behind his eyes. Murak entered, silent as ever, and placed a black datapad on the table. "Recovered from the vault," he said quietly. "Might want to see it." Holt opened the file. His brother's name was there, and next to it, a Pact official's authorization code, signed, stamped, sanctioned, the final betrayal. He stared at the screen, letting the rage settle deep inside his ribs. It didn't burn like before. It was colder now, sharper. He stood slowly. "We're not done." They came for him at dawn. Not stealth ships this time, not scouts or trackers. The Pact sent a fleet. 3 carriers, 2 siege-class destroyers, and an entire battalion of elite enforcers. No diplomacy. No demand for surrender. Just one purpose: erase Leviathan from existence. But Captain Darren Holt didn't run. He stood at the Leviathan war table as alarms howled through the tunnels, every display flashing red. Outside, the stars turned to fire as enemy ships began their orbital drop. Cole was pale. "That's not a strike force. That's extermination." "Good," Holt said coldly. "Let them come. We're not hiding anymore." Murak had already taken sniper position atop the old control spire. Rigo, patched with cybernetics after the Citadel raid, was prepping the last of the charges. Trent stood in full combat armor, still limping from the last mission, but his grip on his weapon was tight and sure. "You could have left," Cole muttered, watching Holt. "You could have vanished after Horus, but you brought the storm here. They need to see what a cornered human looks like. Some of us will die." Holt finally turned to him, eyes ice. "Then we die as something more than ghosts." Above, the first wave hit. Drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, crashing down in thunderous bursts. The ground shook as the enforcers began their push. Black armor, advanced weapons, drones flanking them like metal hounds. But the Leviathan fighters were waiting. The first battle erupted in the outer corridors. Traps triggered, walls exploded, choke points turned into slaughterhouses. For every inch the Pact gained, they paid in blood. Holt fought like a man possessed. Plasma rifle in one hand, combat blade in the other. He moved from line to line, keeping morale from cracking. Every soldier who looked into his eyes saw something worse than fear. They saw purpose. An enforcer commander breached the secondary hall, 7 feet tall, genetically enhanced, wearing a cloak of silken alloy. "You're the traitor," he growled, weapon aimed. "I'm the response." Holt snapped, and fired. The round tore through the commander's neck. The next dropped his guard unit. The blade finished the rest. But it wasn't enough. The Pact numbers overwhelmed the outer defenses. One of the wings collapsed, burying a dozen Leviathan fighters. Brand's console exploded mid-transmission. Cole was shot in the spine and dragged behind the barricade by Trent before dying without a word. Still they fought. Still they refused to kneel. By hour 6, they were pushed back to the command core. Bodies littered the halls, smoke filled the air, and the old Earth Command banner above the war room was scorched and torn. Rigo looked at Holt. "This is it?" Holt nodded. "Then we finish it." He uploaded the remaining Citadel data onto the station's mainframe, files they hadn't yet released. Proof of more war crimes, more betrayals, names that had to fall, systems that would burn if the truth spread. Then he opened the comms. A system-wide broadcast. Open channel. No encryption. "This is Captain Darren Holt, Earthborn 1st Regiment. I don't know how many of us are left. I don't care. But you need to know what happened here. They came not for war, but for silence. They wanted us erased. They called us animals, insurgents, terrorists. But we are not the villains." He looked into the lens. We're the reckoning. Outside, the last blast doors buckled. The pact was nearly through. Holt uploaded the file. And then he detonated the Leviathan core. The explosion rippled through the rock, through the orbit, through the stars. The Citadel data flooded every available signal route. It couldn't be stopped. Thousands of systems received it. Pirates, rebels, fringe colonies, corporate traders, even rogue AI. The truth spilled out. Culdus Prime, the Pact murders, the economic stranglehold, the betrayal, and Holt's final broadcast, a message soaked in fire and blood. Back on the Outer Rim, a rogue Earth vessel received the signal, then another, then 5 more. Across the galaxy, unrest ignited like wildfire. Protests, coups, uprisings. Loyalists began defecting. Ships once sworn to the Pact turned off their comms and vanished into shadow. Humanity didn't forgive. They remembered. And even in death, Captain Darren Holt became more than a soldier. He became a symbol. The fire they tried to smother became the inferno that burned the Empire down.